Extraordinary meeting at the council.
Yeah, hang on. I'm right now.
No.
Someone else.
Hello? Are we good?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I can hear someone over your voice. Anyway, moving, don't have any apologies to Morris.
Morris is an apology.
Morris is an apology. Haven't heard from Jeff, so there's no apology there. I know. So someone move.
Yep.
And second it.
Yeah, I'll second
You and all the papers say aye. Against. Right, no declarations of interest that I know of. No questions that I know of, so we'll just go straight into the number 5, into the reports, and we're dealing with fees and charges.
Jeremy, before we do that, can I raise a point of order regarding the procedural inconsistency around the notice of motion for this meeting, requiring that extraordinary meeting to be notified with 3 days notice, and that they can be provided shorter, but they need to be 24 hours. I'm aware we were given notice at 11:25 yesterday.
Okay. What do you want to reasons for?
Well, it would be good to get an explanation as to why the business is so urgent that it couldn't meet the required notification.
Yeah.
Period.
Do you want to say?
So we had an issue with the timing for the fees and charges. We needed to call the urgent meeting for the appointment of the public excluded item. And apologies if that was a couple of hours late. It obviously was. I thought we had some discretion to do that. So apologies, councillor, for that. And since we're having that extraordinary meeting, it was felt there was an opportunity to put the fees and charges in, which we need to address because of time frame issues. It's needed to meet time frames at the other end. It was important that we get the fees and charges through at this point. At this meeting was an opportunity to do that. Otherwise, we're going to need to call another special extraordinary meeting to have those dealt with. So, but yeah, we've got an issue. And I thought we had some discretion on that time, but realising 24 hours was the key thing.
Standing orders does provide for us to be able to call a meeting at a moment's notice, and we can either give public notice immediately, and if need be, we can publicise the decisions made following the meeting, and that covers the basis for the notification period.
I don't think that's the case. I think 8.5 requires that the notice must A, include the general nature of the business to be considered, and B, be provided to each member at least 3 working days before the meeting, and then goes on to state that if the meeting is called by resolution.
It's not a reservation.
Then how is this meeting called?
It's called by requisition from the chairman.
In which case it needs to be consistent with B, 3 days. So you can go down to 24 hours if it's called by resolution.
What, just in regards to this, so what do you, obviously, yeah, I understand the main point, what do you want done in regards to this?
Look, I think the issue it raises for me is that we're in a situation of being forced to make decisions in a very short time frame without particularly good protest or adequate time to consider the agenda. I've got a paper copy of the agenda 5 minutes before the meeting started. I wasn't able to get an electronic copy of it last night because Objective wouldn't let me log in to access that. So I think there's an issue there that we need to be looking about.
No, point taken. Is there any comments anybody else have? I'm happy to listen. So, Paul.
There was mention of this in the last term on a few occasions, just in past in time of the meeting. There was a notice that this was moved, so I know this is an extraordinary situation, and I'm fine with it, but I do understand the concerns of councillor Hodgson.
Sorry, Linda, and then Phil.
Yeah, just a couple of things, I guess, acknowledged, and in the interests of continuous improvement, we just need to make sure that it doesn't happen this way again if we can cover. Yeah.
I'm just going to observe that the key thing probably that has triggered a need to have a conversation soon is the public excluded item. There's an opportunity to strike and quickly and effectively. So it's probably just looking for efficiency in how we do our business, knowing that there's probably not a huge risk associated with what discussion might occur on that one. The second one, I think we knew it was out there floating, and having said, well, we're going to do this meeting this morning, it kind of just made sense. Well, let's take the opportunity while we're convening that to attend to that quite routine matter as well. So while I acknowledge it, I think there's what am I saying? Balancing risk and efficiency. This does seem to make sense to try and attend to these two issues at this morning.
Yeah, I'll take it on. We did talk about when can we notify, and it was actually because we've got a full strat policy. I said, well, can we do this? And it's about the public excluded item. Makes sense. Everyone's going to be here. And we knew through this process that there might be a time when we have to get together and just sign this off. So without saying too much. So, but it is important that there are rules. And do you want to just clarify?
Standing Order 8.13, meetings are not invalid. Failing to publicly notify a meeting does not of itself invalidate a meeting. Where a council becomes aware that a meeting has not been properly notified, it must, as soon as possible, give public notice that the meeting has been held, state the date that it occurred, the general nature of the items discussed, and the reasons why it was not notified. We have actually notified it as required, but that was the point I was making. We can publicly notify what we have done after the case.
It was, sorry, here.
Well, yeah, I understand the reasons why we've done this, and the notification does sit within it. I think for me, the issue was it would be good if we had the supporting papers at a time we could consume them as well. That's more of an issue for me, and I couldn't get them online, and I came down here at 20 to 5 last night looking for them, and they weren't printed either at that stage. So let's just treat it as a learning experience and see if we can facilitate that a bit more. But that would be my only comment.
Sorry, one more thing. I was a bit concerned too because I hadn't been able to go through the fees and charges as fun, but that's approving it for consultation. So actually the decisions about the contents will come later. It's just simply about us putting the document out for consultation. More important, low risk.
Yeah. Okay. No. Is that look? Can proceed, but point taken, Roger.
Yeah, I'm prepared to proceed. I think Eric's point is similar to mine, that the main issue is the inadequate time to consider what's a fairly substantive decision for us to make as a region. So yeah, we'll obviously have to follow up afterwards and notify what we've done and explain why.
And can we, through your chief, can we check in with the ones who couldn't connect electronically with us and just tease out those reasons, because obviously it's going to be important to access documents. So we do that. Apply. Did anyone else let me know that who had problems and what was
David last?
Well, I was just going to support what Roger's saying. I think there has been times even before this when papers have been dumped on us at the last minute, and you've got to have time to reflect on them. We understand today though a practical way through, but I agree with this thing about having time to consider.
And look at through chair again, in a normal sense, we put the team put real focus on getting papers out on time. You know, that's a real focus of the admin team here. So you know, this is a new situation, so.
Right. We'll carry on with them, we'll take note of those. things that Roger has brought up and, but we'll move on into the meeting anyway. So we'll move in straight into the 5 reports. And the fees and charges. Are you going through?
No, it's, can we hand over to Patrick?
Patrick,
Are you online, there, Patrick?
Thank you. Just a few quick comments to make. So per relevant RMA and Local Government Act legislation, what we are seeking is approval from Council to take the proposed 2026-27 fees and charges schedule out for consultation. This is coming to you in an out of cycle meeting because of the tight timeframes associated with the consultation, and noted the comments earlier, and our apologies if there was trouble accessing the documentation. The schedule we're taking out for consultation has several minor changes to the previous schedule. The key changes are uplifting charges with a proposed CPI adjustment of 2.5%, removing the high GM charge rate as outlined in the workshop of a couple of weeks ago, and GMs would use the senior consent officer rate going forward, and then updating wording to ensure it remains consistent with current legislation, for example, the fast track consenting process. Just worth noting, the finance team has undertaken a brief legal review to ensure that the wording reflects current legislation throughout the document. Assuming approval to consult, the next step will now be consultation. That will occur between April and May, and an analysis of the submissions and hearings would then be completed prior to finalisation. And then the new fees and charges schedule, once agreed to, would take effect from 1 July 2026. So that's the remaining process to be followed in respect of the fees and charges schedule. So in summary, our request is is seeking permission to go out for consultation.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. Alistair?
Back when we discussed this a while ago, Patrick, there was discussions and you lined it up that it was equivalent to other regional councils, air charges and things. Firstly, did you review that? And I think the point was made quite strongly that it needs to be fair, reasonable and transparent. We don't have to line up with anybody. Did you take that approach?
Alistair, the approach that's been taken is in terms of the legal review, the CPI adjustment, and the change to the GM charge rate. The workshop that we had a couple of weeks ago, I outlined how our charges compare and tried to be as transparent as possible in terms of what the recovery rates might reflect in terms of our own environment. The key change that came from that workshop is the change to the GM rate. So when we went through the workshop, reviewed what our charges look like and compared them to our peers, what stood out was that our GM rate didn't compare with peers, and I couldn't tie it back to anything reasonable, which is why we've made the recommendation that the GM rate becomes the senior consent officer rate going forward. So that's the key change that's come from that review exercise that we did.
Dave?
Yeah, look, I've got 2 or 3 points on this. First one is about deemed permitted activity. $621. I guess there was a fee last year, and maybe I wasn't. Well, no, it's a new. Just wanting to know a bit more about that. Secondly, about gravel extraction, because I know at one stage there was submissions to the, I think it was last year, around being able to remove gravel extraction fees to help make it more attractive to get gravel out when needed, working with cash flow division. And lastly, it's around farm plans. So it looks like it could be up to a $500 charge or more for farm plans. And if there's 3,000 of these, do we actually need $1.5 million to cover the costs?
Question. Answer it.
Well, I'm
just trying to find the deemed permitted activity I was going through.
Yeah, deemed permitted activity was on page 12.
Well.
Under fixed charge. $546 plus GST.
Perhaps Hayley, you able to address this, Hayley? Patrick,
Oh, sorry.
and also Patrick might be able to help as well.
Okay.
Patrick, do you want to kick off?
I see Hayley's joined the table. I might hand over to Hayley for those details if that's okay.
So the first part I'm going to do is talk about the gravel monitoring charge or the gravel extraction charge.
Well, there's a gravel fee, there's a gravel extraction of $2,343. Is a fixed charge.
I think that's Lucy was to talk to that because I can talk to the monitoring charge for monitoring gravel consents, which is an initial fixed fee in that. And so, so we did a huge piece of analysis of the costs to make sure that the costs were as close to actual. So whilst it's an initial fixed fee and recognising that gravel extraction consents are all over the region, we did a piece of analysis looking back over, I think, 2 to 3 years of costs to make sure that that initial fixed fee was as close to the actual cost as possible for undertaking that monitoring. Rated the travel cost, so the vehicle, we took the average of how long we were on site and looked at the amount of time it took us to drive to the average gravel consent site, plus the amount of time with a small amount of paperwork that's associated with it. I think the fee that noting the earlier points about the agenda, I don't have a copy of the agenda. That's where Lucy's just gone to go and grab. I think the fee you might be referring to is the fee that goes to the catchment operations team as opposed to my team. My team have, what we did last year in the last fees and charges review was split them out to provide transparency to those consent holders about when they pay the bill to ES, what was it actually for, and could we then, particularly in my area, the monitoring area, where was the evidence and the data, which we actually provided to the councillors, like all the spreadsheets, which showed the analysis that we'd undertaken to get to that initial fixed fee suggestion that then went into and became an initial fixed fee charge for monitoring. Lucy should be able to speak to the other charge.
If I may, I think there was some strong submissions around following what happens in other parts of the country to help promote where it needs to come out, remitting the charges.
Yes,
I don't see that anywhere here. So.
Yes, we did actually have some really good submissions, and actually we, ahead of those submissions being receipted, I met with a number of the larger gravel extraction consent holders, and we actually talked about undertaking a project to look at that. And that is something that is on Lucy and my long list to look at, because what we didn't want is the other charge, the one that goes to catchment operations, when we do receipted, to have, particularly in areas where there was actually a need to remove the gravel, we wanted to make sure we had no barrier or disincentive through, through just a standard kind of volume charge. And so we actually, as part of the discussions at that time, agreed that we would go away and have a look at that, because we needed to look at it within the context of the broader catchment operations budget to see if you depress something here, what's the consequence of that, and is that a consequence we can find other sources of funding for or efficiencies. I'm now speaking to Lucy's crew here, so I'm in dangerous territory if we're coming up boxy on the head.
She's coming up.
Yeah, but when we talk about getting onto that, I think it's more onto the long list of things to do.
I think the point
we
is
had
it could be a benefit for other
take-
expenditure you have less because you've had that come out. So it's about doing away with the.
And in the end, I think what we got to was we needed to recruit the right people into Lucy's team. That was the first stage, who needed to get their feet under the desk so they could understand the ecosystem of our operations. Why am I talking?
It's fine.
Sorry.
Through you, Chair, just quick answer, a quick additional answer on the gravel related charges. So for my team, yes, there's a fixed charge that comes in and that mostly pays for the advisory service that people would get from my team in terms of the geomorphology and numerous other pieces of information from the whole, the cross sections, those good pieces. So that's what.
Lucy, can I, sorry about that.
No.
All good. We're just, at the end of the day, people can consult and put their, you know, whether we need to be deep diving into why some of these numbers are. It'll be about encouraging people to actually submit to this and question some of this if need be. I mean, the stuff might be long-term plan discussion. I'm not cutting off though. I'm just trying to, because that's the thing. If some people aren't happy with this, they can ask the questions and we have to provide
Just
the
the
answers.
short question really is, can it be remitted or are we approving something that has to be charged and charged in every case? I guess
I'm not
that's.
sure specifically under what act we are charging that charge, but it's under the RMA. The RMA does say we can remit any charge at any time for any reason.
Right.
It's nice and catch-all, isn't it?
Yeah. In regards to the DPR, deemed permitted
Oh, for the
activity,
deemed permitted
that's their
activity.
winter grazing. Is that,
No,
or is it
so
for
deemed
everything?
permitted activity is a very specific thing.
But that's
and
why
so
we
that's
did bring it in.
different to farm plans.
So we brought it in for winter grazing this is,
Yes, this
This
was
is
before
what
my
I'm saying.
time. Yes,
Yeah.
that's for a very
we brought
specific.
deemed permitted activity. I take it, just out of interest, can people still apply for a deemed permitted
No, that
activity?
deemed permitted
Winter
activity
grazing.
had
only for that time.
limit. It had a sunset clause, and it was my understanding, I wasn't here at the time, was to reflect a very specific set of
Yeah.
climatic conditions which had severe impact on farmers' operations. And so we've got the kind of solution sits there. So if we had, you know, another spring like we did that spring, everything's sort of sitting there in the background that we could then bring a paper up to council and you could make that decision to kind of put that solution back in place. So it just sort of sits there as a
So it's there,
awesome thing.
it was never there before where we talked about winter,
I mean, you can apply for
farm
deemed
plans.
permitted
farm
activity.
plans were the reason it turned up.
Yeah, people
Because we
do
just weren't able to
all the
get-
time, but that was a very specific time limited solution
Yeah.
to a regulatory and climate, you know, weather problem that had severe consequences on farm.
Yeah.
That meant farmers couldn't adhere to the rules specifically, and so it was just an elegant way of very quickly getting farmers the confidence to do what they needed to do that wet spring.
So are you saying that there was a bad situation, but you would deem it under the climatic conditions at the time as a deemed permitted activity?
Yeah, yeah, we set up a little regulatory kind of task force,
Yeah.
pushed the messages out, farmers then responded. It meant that they had the confidence to keep doing what they needed to do in response to that very wet period that was unusually bad. It had a time limit. Now you can apply for a deemed permitted activity for anything at any time, and we get all sorts of weird and wonderful things. And so, you know, deemed permitted activities are a thing. We don't get many of them. And you know, often they've got quite a strong public good element to them.
Didn't
But
move.
they're not to do with farm plans.
Simply after consultation, we'll get another opportunity
Well, that's
to
the-
do these
Get
again.
feedback from the community.
That's
That's
what
what I
they
was sort
were
of saying, that we can, there'll be no doubt questions and we can tease it out then. So that's what we're putting it out for
I
consultation.
just have one more brief thing, it was around the farm plans. And that if we want 3,000 of these, it's gonna cost about $100. It's $1.5 million, is that really a cost?
I've not been over the detail of how that farm planning cost has come. That's been sitting in SAM team, so I need to look. I can look at that. $500 is built up.
Well, there's two tranches to it.
And again,
Something we do.
cool. again, it can be dealt with through the complicated question that we asked. No
But I'll
doubt.
get over that.
I think we do get asked questions last every year.
Yep.
I'm just trying to find that. So have we got any other questions? If not.
Make a comment on that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, right.
On the gravel point, I think it's really important that we have a strong evidence base to support the gravel extraction that's occurring. And so there's a risk that if we are advancing remittance of those income streams, that we aren't able to maintain that evidence base to provide for the long-term sustainability of gravel extraction, is also avoiding the unintended negative consequences associated with it. So, you know, with that said, I'm prepared to move.
Good.
Can I just add just a follow-up to that, through you, Chair? That was indeed why the council at the time was like, actually, seems like a great idea on the surface of it. We need a robust evidence base to make sure that we're remitting in the right place for the right reasons. And so that's why it wasn't, my understanding is, and I was in the room during the discussions, that council at the time was like, actually, we need to send you away to do more work on this, both in terms of the organisational impact and in terms of, you know, engaging with the gravel extraction industry.
Should be an silo.
From an environmental perspective as well.
Yeah. We'll move. We've got Roger and Lyndall going to second it in regards to the fees and charges schedule and statement of proposal for consultation. No further discussion. All in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Right. Move into number 6. Go public excluded for reasons being.
To protect the privacy of natural persons and for our council to carry on negotiations including commercial and industrial without prejudice or disadvantage.
Over Phil and David. All in favour, say aye. Against, carried. Right. Cool.